financial flow and also do value addition from the natural capital. The third preamble also is from the Assembly, which was held in Addis Ababa this year, which requested the high-level committee on post-2015 to ensure that Africa's participation in the third international conference on financing for development, which is projected in June, is informed and called upon member states to participate at the highest level possible, and recommending for a special session of the high-level committee during the next session. The other aspect which we need to recall is the welcoming of the decision of the 23rd, which was in Malabo again, which talked about African peer review mechanism to be an autonomous entity. The African peer review mechanism will be needed for monitoring the implementation of the post-2015 development agenda. The next aspect is still again in Malabo last year. There was a report of the high-level committee, which of course endorsed the Common African Position. Again, in the 23rd ordinary session, which was held in Addis Ababa, it was to deal with the small island states, of course, with the Samoa pathway. Samoa pathway came after the heads of states. And then we are also reminding ourselves on the 22nd session, which also talked about the maritime strategy for Africa as this strategy to drive Africa's marine. Yesterday we had a presentation on marine. And disaster risk reduction. Africa already has got a strategy on disaster risk reduction, so it is recognized here. And then we also have also still on disaster, which was recognized by the decision of the Executive Council at its 24th session held in January this year, which endorsed the African Regional Platform and the Abuja meeting on disaster risk reduction, which was held at that time, which of course talked about the ecosystem-based approaches, institutional mechanisms, and stakeholder participation. We also know we are going to have a session on the African women ministers and leaders, of which was launched in Johannesburg in June 2008. But under this session, gender or gender-related matters is going to be launched and officially launched. The African chapter of the African Women Ministers. The African Women Ministers is a global aspect. Every continent has a chapter, and Africa is launching its, I think, tomorrow or Thursday here in Cairo. We also notice that the ordinary session, the 14th ordinary session of AMSEN, talked or handled the work of the African Commission on the AU guidelines on access and benefit sharing, which was talked about yesterday by the African Union. We are also aware that under the Montreal Protocol, the hydrofluorocarbons, while they are non-ozone depleting substances, they are ozone friendly, there is still a big need to manage their production and consumption. But as we know, they affect climate, and therefore a phase down on hydrofluorocarbons will have a great benefit to the environment, and we need to talk about that. There's an operative paragraph. I think there are two of them there. And we are also talking about last year, the African Sustainable Transport Forum was held in Nairobi, and an action framework was agreed upon. Sustainable transport is major for environmental matters. We are also aware that in Arusha last year, the first African Mountains Forum was held. This is a direct support to implementation of 2015 Development Agenda and the Rio +20 outcomes. What they are calling for is the development of a regional strategy on mountains and their contribution to the development of Africa. Tomorrow, we are also going to launch the African Mountain Atlas, which the importance of all this is to bring African mountains to the political agenda as they are a major resource for development of the region. One other issue which has been appearing of recent, an emerging issue, not really emerging, but which has been of major concern globally, but also in Africa, is on air pollution, whereby Africa is, we are having around 776,000 deaths per year occurring on this continent out of air pollution, both indoor and outdoor, and therefore we need to take action as a continent to contain air pollution. Natural capital here also comes in as an issue of major concern. As Secretariat, we thought harnessing natural capital should come from you member states to see how it should move, and also the post-2015 development agenda in the operative aspects. You should give direction on how it should move. That's why it's written to be inserted. But on wildlife, we have operative paragraphs and so on and so on. I don't want to go into those until we are there. So, Chair, that is by way of an overview of what we thought would be the major issues. Of course, member states are free to bring in as many as possible. We are at your service.
Objections from other member states so that it reflects more on what the content and the intention of the decision is. We also welcome your inputs in writing to the Secretariat, who will capture those. I also want to just comment on the issue you raised around the creation of another panel for the decision. It is page 3, paragraph 5. We've had a look at the recent AU Assembly decisions, which came out of the summit in January, and there is already an existing panel at the AU level, which is basically tasked with dealing with the issues of illicit financial flows from Africa. It does make reference to all the other issues related to this, including corruption and arms trades and other illegal activities, and makes references to the actual figures which are affecting Africa in terms of the financial flows. So I think we need to think whether we would want our ministers to recommend to the AU to create another high-level panel when there is already an existing one, or whether we should rather recommend that that panel also deals maybe more substantially with the issues of natural resources and their relation to illegal financial flows. I just put this out to the colleagues and delegates here as to whether we would rather, as Egypt has proposed, use the existing high-level panel that's already there at the heads of state level, or whether we would have a proposal to have another structure to deal specifically with the natural resource financial flows. First, I would like to recognize Uganda and then Ethiopia, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And like the chairman yesterday, you don't see Angola, at least you can see Uganda. But I'd like to start with the last point that you made, because it was also a question that we had in terms of the procedure, but based on your clarification, the short answer would be that we would prefer to work within the existing panel, but rather emphasize to it the need to take issues relating to natural capital more into account as they do their work. With regard to the resolution in general, I'd like to thank the Secretariat for the initial draft, but we do have a concern that stems from the orientation, the approach that they've used with regard to the issue of resources. I think there's an overemphasis on the domestic mobilization of resources. And while we understand the huge potential that Africa has, there's a danger that you might actually pull the rug from under the feet of our negotiators, both under the climate change arrangement and also under the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's a need to balance that, and we also need to take into account that the Common African Position, while recognizing the importance of the domestic mobilization of resources, does stress the role of international cooperation and principles like common but differentiated responsibilities as well. So there's a need for balance in this regard. I also want to echo the emphasis on industrialization and value addition. I think also there's a tendency to give the impression that the primary problem is the illicit flow and not the lack of industrialization and value addition. It seems to come as a secondary point. I think we need to also flag that right up there. Okay. Yes, so at this point, maybe I'd prefer to look at what the resolution would look like after it's adopted. I mean, after it's amended with the comments, then I would come back to see if these concerns have been addressed. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks Uganda for that important point, and the need to retain balance between international financing and resource mobilization and domestic, and the issue of industrialization. I know that's very important for Africa, and even in SADC we have a very strong move towards front-loading industrialization, value addition and beneficiation of natural resources rather than exporting raw resources out of the continent, which I think has been one of the trends that has bedeviled us for some time. Colleagues, any other inputs on this? I know we have a couple of other decisions to go through. I recognize Botswana and then Ghana. And, sorry, Ethiopia. My apologies, Ethiopia. Ethiopia first, then Botswana.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see in paragraph 7C or D that the African Ministers of Finance will meet in March in Addis Ababa, and I think I don't know where to put this very important concept of that should be taken by these ministers or assembly of these ministers, that African finance minister has to take attention or give attention for environment, especially in allocating sufficient fund for conservation of environmental assets. Because most of the time, as you remember, for example, there are a lot of situations where limited resources are allocated for the conservation of environmental assets. So it's important to put somewhere that this African finance minister will take attention of the decision of AMSEN on allocating sufficient finance for conservation of natural capital, in general, environmental assets. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethiopia, are you proposing amendments to the text, or should we rather elevate that particular item?
Somewhere, we should emphasize this somewhere, so that African finance minister will take attention of allocating sufficient resource for environment sector.
Okay, I think that point was also made earlier by another delegate, the issue of allocation of sufficient finances. Perhaps we can put that somewhere either in this decision or in the declaration, make sure that it's captured. Thanks. If you have any proposed text, please forward to us and the Secretariat. Thank you. Botswana?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That first submission would be that we support the maintaining the high-level panel with the revised terms of reference to look more at natural capital accounting, and also that we have made a submission of written text to paragraph 2, which I forwarded it to Lucy, which includes evaluation of natural resources and integrating their values onto the system of national accounts as well as business balance sheet to reflect the contribution of natural resources as a way of reducing illicit flows. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have submitted the text already, I gather? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Ghana, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would want to contribute to 2 areas on the declaration. And the first one is on green economy. That recognizing the decisions from Arusha and Abuja in the support of adopting green economy as a tool for achieving sustainable development and poverty reduction in Africa, as well as building on agreements reached at the Rio +20 conference. We think that green economy would be a tool for achieving sustainable development. We would provide a detailed text on that. And the second has to do with marine and coastal areas that we agree to support the Regional Seas Program in Africa and working towards its African Integrated Marine Strategy for 2050 and Agenda 2063 on ecosystem-based management. That we agree to support the activities of sustainable fisheries management and biodiversity conservation of deep sea, living marine resources and ecosystems. We're looking at the marine spatial planning and the area-based planning tools in collaboration with other institutions like Regional Seas Programs, FAO, and RFMOs, and that would agree to prepare periodic reporting on these areas for the African coastal states, and this be supported by AMSEN. This as well would provide a detailed proposal for consideration. Thank you.
Sorry, Ghana, are you finished?
Yes.
My apologies. I think I was waiting for the last installment of your intervention, but thank you. I assume both points are for the declaration, not for this decision.
Declaration.
Okay, if you can provide, as you said, the inputs into the text before lunch, we'll appreciate that. Thank you. Colleagues, shall we move on to the next decision? Or do we... Namibia. Please.
Chair, thank you very much. I really don't know where I will place this, but it's also associated with the issue of natural capital. As I have mentioned earlier, that land resource issues really also need to be of given attention there. I would like to propose that at least we see on the agenda the issue of UNCCD and CBD, and I think UNCCD being really a convention which touches so much of life of so many communities in Africa, I would like to see probably to suggest that it become a permanent agenda point on AMESN, as also the same with the CBD conventions. I really don't know where will we put it there. And related to that is the issue of coordination, especially with reference to UNCCD, and I think the regional coordination unit. Really, I think that this meeting would really like to see something in that regard of strengthening the regional coordinating unit with regard to the UNCCD, and also to see it based and hosted in the African continent, so that it really facilitates better coordination with the implementation of the convention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Namibia. I think we have recognized the importance of land degradation, desertification issues for Africa. Many of our countries are grappling with this issue. We will definitely have to see how we deal with that in both the declaration and the draft decision. I think we have had some attempts to capture those issues already, but if you can provide further text, we'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I will provide further text in this regard.
Thank you. Secretariat?
Chair, issues regarding UNCCD at the third special session of AMSEN, which was held in Bamako. Desertification was, and the convention was